welcome to another exciting episode of Baseball Now. I'm your host, Scott. We've had an exciting week. I know we missed last week, Memorial Day weekend. We took the week off to enjoy time with our family. But we're back for some more baseballs. We had some interesting matchups last week. We had another loss by the Gatlinburg Knights, falling to 0-9. The Wildcats have continued their downhill spiral into oblivion with another loss, falling to 5-5. We've got the Express chugging along at full steam ahead, making a regroup from last year's disappointing season, and more. And we're going to send it on down to Thomas in our Atlanta studio here in just a minute for the weekly recap brought to you by Tammy Cakes, and a look at the week ahead brought to you by East Tennessee Media. So Thomas, why don't you take it away for your weekly recap?
Well, thank you, Scott. Hopefully, everybody had a good week last week. Some interesting scores around the league and some interesting facts coming up later on. But right now, let's go ahead and take a look at that week number 10 recap as we're already just about halfway through the year. It seems like just yesterday that we just did the draft and the pre-draft special show live in the East Tennessee Media Studios back in March. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get to that Week 10 recap. The first game on the schedule, you had the Georgia Dominators, that's myself, 493 points. The Macon Chili Dogs at 360, that's Ken. That snaps Ken's 5-game winning streak, as both the Dominators and the Chili Dogs moved to 6-4. The next game, you had the Demon Ducks, that's Greg, at 476 points. With the Wildcats, that's Tammy checking in at 416. The Wildcats with the loss moved to 5-5. And the Ducks with the close win moved to 7-3. Interesting game here. Next game, you have just a little crazy, that's Dan at 542 points. With the former, it was the Gatlinburg Knights that were 0-9. Now it's the Gatlinburg Cubs. Same result as the first 9, another loss. They had 330 points. That would be Scotty. And now his record sits at 0-10, as he is now in his last 31 games. He is now 1-30. You have the next game on the schedule. You have the Atlanta Express. That's Ruben at 516, moving to 8-2 over the Warner Robin Bombers at 291 points. He moves to 2-8. So interesting game. Dominators needed to pick up a win over Chili Dogs. They now own a 2-0 series lead this year. That could be crucial. The Wildcats continue their slide on back down, and they really got to get going. They've already fell, as we'll take a look at the playoff picture in a minute. They've already fell off the playoff. They're already behind, and now they have a 1-1 tie with the Dominators. So that means that next game against the Dominators, that could be a playoff elimination game right there. Could be. The Cubs, they're looking for their first win. Same song, same tune, same story as it's been all year for the Cubs. Dan was just a little too much this week. Had an early lead in this game. I think Tuesday or Wednesday it was pretty much out of reach. So we'll have to see how these teams move forward from here. And then the Express, they continue on their dominant role right now over the Bombers, but haven't really played a very strong schedule. They've played Ken and they lost, and they also lost to the Dominators. More on that coming up. So that was your look at the Week 10 recap. And I want to take this moment on behalf of MLB 2K24 to everybody say a prayer for one of our league members, Dan. Right now, he has been in the hospital the last couple of days. We're thinking about you, Dan. Everybody say a prayer for Dan. With that being said, we'll go on to another feature here. Who's hot and who is not? Week 11. Who's hot right now? The Atlanta Express. They've won 4 in a row. Also, another team that's hot on the prowl is the Demon Duck Lindsay's. They've won 3 in a row. Now, on the flip side of that, who's not hot? Who is ice cold? The As we've mentioned before, the Gatlinburg Cubs have lost 10 in a row. Um, but the next team on the list is the Wildcats. They are not hot right now. They've lost 4 in a row, and they were number one for a while, and now they are falling through the pack a little bit. As we all said, teams will come and go, so that's not really a big surprise. Um, so that's not a surprise. Anything can happen. And now, with that being said, let's take a look at the current playoffs. Now, this is a little bit different than what the ESPN has it right now, that I don't believe they have the tiebreaker correct. But right now, your number one seed would be the Express, your number two seed would be the Ducks, your third seed would be Just a Little Crazy Dan, and your fourth seed would be the Dominators. And the fifth seed right now would be the Chili Dogs. However, um, the Just a Little Crazy, the Dominators, and the Chili Dogs all have the same record, identical at 6-4. Just a Little Crazy owns no, excuse me, yeah, all of them are at 6-4. Just a Little Crazy owns the tiebreaker over the Dominators head to head from earlier in the year, from a 12-point victory, and the Dominators own the head to head tiebreaker over the Chili Dogs because of their 2-0 series so far. And the Chili Dogs are just outside of number 5, and then 6 you would have the Wildcats, and they are outside, a full game behind. And that's your look at the playoffs. Now we'll go ahead and turn that page and take a look at week number 11. We'll start off with the Chili Dogs versus the Wildcats. The Wildcats really need to get a win here. It's really crucial to get back on the winning way, and they need this over Ken. And then you have the Bombers, Jackson versus Scotty, the Cubs. Can Scotty get his first win against Jackson? Then we have 2 game of the week this week. The first one is the Demon Ducks versus Just a Little Crazy. Another tight battle here. And the second game of the week is the Express versus the Dominators. Last time the Dominators faced the Express, it was a 70-point victory. It was 565 points total for the Dominators, as that score has been running rampant the last 2 or 3 days. Interesting ball games. Now I want to take a look at some facts. The first game we're going to look at is the Georgia Dominators versus the Atlanta Express. 2023 and 2024, the Dominators have won 4 straight over the Express, and they have been at least 80 points or higher in the margin of victory. The next fact, and this is actually interesting, between the Ducks and Just a Little Crazy, since 2022, Dan has won 4 games. Greg has won 3. If you take that playoff game out of it, then last year's championship game, you take that out, then Dan and Greg are dead even at 3-3 over their last 6. So very interesting to see what happens with that. And that is all the time for tonight. And we will send it back to Scott in our East Tennessee Media Studios. Have a great week, everybody, and see you back here on Thursday for the Bullpen Show.
Great report. We look forward to seeing you this Thursday on the Bullpen Show, right here on Cashman Sports and East Tennessee Media's Facebook page and YouTube page. So be sure at the end of this video to subscribe and like to our channel so you can catch more of our great Baseball Now and Bullpen. And look forward to our fantasy football shows coming up this fall. But anyway, let's take a look at some headlines and news for this week. We've got a name change in the league. The Gatlinburg Knights have finalized a deal. They have turned back into the Gatlinburg Cubs, as they were 4 or 5 years ago when they had some success winning. So I'm going back to the Gatlinburg Cubs. There was no major trades this week or waiver pickups that really made any splashes. But let's go ahead and take a look back at the Commissioner's Power Rankings. I know everybody out there is looking forward to seeing what this week beholds. And there are some changes coming up this week. Your top two spots are the same as they've been for the last week or two. The Atlanta Express, that's 8-2, and the Demon Ducks, which is Greg, is 7-3. Little Bit Crazy, which is Dan, is 6-4, along with the Dominators at 6-4. So you've got one or two teams separating themselves at the top. And then you've got the Wildcats, who have fallen down to the number 5 spot. You know, remember, like we talked about early in the show, the Wildcats are slowly starting to go back down, come back down to earth. You know, they jumped off to a humongous undefeated start, and since then they just can't get things going, it seems like. Then you've got the Macon Chili Dogs at 6-4. And then you've got the same two teams at the bottom of the power rankings that's been down there, the Warner Robin Bombers at 2-8, and the Gatlinburg Cubs at 0-10. At some point this year, I hope to look forward to getting that first victory, but we'll see what beholds. But that's all we got for today's show, so make sure you like and subscribe our page, and we look forward to seeing you later this week on The Bullpen and Monday. I'm your host, Scott. This has been Baseball Now. Have a great rest of your week.
This has been a production of Cash and Sports, a division of East Tennessee Media.